There's multiple kinds of emotions, of course, but did you know that some emotions come naturally, automatically, while others we actually manufacture ourselves? There are many different names for this. Some call them primary emotions and secondary emotions. Some people call them primary emotions and manufactured emotions, or natural emotions and manufactured emotions. But the idea here is that there are emotions that sometimes we can create, or we make them bigger than what they started out as. So let me give you an example to try to help you understand. Some emotions are absolutely automatic. We have no control over them. For example, if I were driving my car and someone were to swerve in front of me quickly on the freeway, I would slam on my brake before I even thought about what was happening. My initial emotion is fear in that situation. And many times when I ask people, if someone cut you off in traffic, what would you feel? And they say angry. And the reason I know that anger is not their first emotion if they actually got cut off to the point where they nearly got in an accident is because they're still alive and they didn't get in a car accident. Your first automatic emotion is fear, and it keeps you alive. And luckily, you press that brake before you even have the chance to think about what's happening, because by the time you have the thought of someone's cutting me off, I might hit the car in front of me, I should brake, it's too late. So luckily, fear takes over, your body reacts without any thought, and then after that, you have a thought. Typically, I hear people say, I get angry, which means that the manufactured emotion in this example is anger. So we have a thought, something like, that person is a jerk, that person shouldn't have cut me off, that person's going to kill somebody, they need to be more careful, all the drivers in the state are terrible. Whatever the thought might be, it manufactures a second emotion, or that's why some people call it a secondary emotion, right? It creates anger in this case for some people. It creates frustration. And so instead of feeling fear and just sitting with that and going, whew, that was scary. I almost got in an accident. That was really scary. Oh, let me take a deep breath, shake out all the nervous energy, recognize I'm good, and move on. Instead, we start to think of all these different reasons the person cut us off, that they're jerks, or they meant to, or it's personal, right? We start to imagine all these different things about them, that they're terrible drivers, that they always do this to people, whatever it might be, right? These thoughts create the secondary emotions. They create the anger, they create frustration, and maybe even create rage, right? We can see it go up, like the temperature from low to high. As our anger gets higher and higher, we actually can start to have rage, and that's where we see road rage, right? And so if we sat with the original emotion, fear, it'd be very different. But we want to make sense of why our body's reacting. What's this adrenaline mean? And we put thoughts on there, and often we get it wrong. We create this feeling of anger. So that's just one example. Another great example of a manufactured emotion is guilt. Now, there are times when guilt is appropriate. We're going to talk about that more in another video. But for this one, I want to talk about when guilt becomes manufactured. So let me give you the example of, let's say, my grandmother dies, right? And if I told you I feel really guilty, you might think, why? Did you kill her? Right? If I didn't actually do anything wrong, then guilt isn't really the primary emotion, right? My primary emotion is probably grief or sadness, something in that sadness, depression, grief realm, right? But what can happen so often is, instead of sitting with that primary emotion, because it doesn't feel good, right, is I tell myself things like, oh, I should have spent more time with her. Oh, I should have visited last month when I had the chance. I should have been there more. Oh, I wish I had known. I would have brought her a present. I would have celebrated something with her recently, right? I start to make these shoulda, coulda, wouldas, or I talk to myself in a negative way, and then I create this inappropriate guilt because maybe I didn't really do anything wrong. I did the best I could with the information I had at the time, right? So my secondary emotion, or my manufactured emotion, is guilt in this example. Start off with sadness and grief, and instead I create a secondary emotion, this manufactured emotion of intense guilt. Some people even have shame. So any emotion that we can experience can be an automatic primary emotion, but there are some that are more likely to be manufactured emotions. When they're really high, when the emotions are really strong, likely a manufactured emotion is happening. We've either built on the primary emotion or we've created it entirely as a manufactured emotion. The other way we can tell that a manufactured emotion might be happening is that we're having something that doesn't actually make sense when we think about it, right? Like the inappropriate guilt's coming up, or you're angry at somebody and you've never even met them, right? So think about this, and I want you to look out through this next week and see if you can identify primary or original automatic thoughts and emotions, and also then see when you're having a manufactured or secondary emotion. See if you can start to pick them out. It's fascinating when you do, and it really gives us a new insight into ourselves when we start to see what emotions do we tend to manufacture. Do you have a favorite theme you go to? Is maybe one emotion feels safer for you, and so you tend to go there, and that's the one you keep going back to? What does that say about you? What does it say about not wanting to sit with the original automatic emotion? I hope you enjoyed this. I'm Dr. Kristen Kopacz, clinical psychologist in California, and you can subscribe if you want to hear more. We're going to talk more next week, and I'll definitely get into the guilt piece more. You can also find me on my website at drkinthebay.com. Thanks so much.